You're listening to RTL SA.
Mumford & Sons, Babel, and before that, South African Jeremy Loops with Sinner on RTL SA. And now we're going to talk about Zimbabwe a little bit. Our neighbors are in trouble again. Have they ever not been in trouble? That is the actual question. Now, state security forces on Tuesday forced Bulawayo residents in the central business district to go back home amid reports of a planned protest by some citizens over the deteriorating economic situation in the country and alleged human rights abuses. According to residents, armed soldiers and members of the Zimbabwe Republic Police detained several people and beat up those who questioned their motive in blocking them from accessing cash in banks and buying food supplies. Police spokesperson Paul Nyati was unreachable for comment amid concerns that soldiers were urging people to loot goods in some of the shops. This could not be independently verified by the Voice of America. Now, soldiers blocked people from accessing the central businesses district. Poor, desperate people who had come to collect cash from the banks were chased away. If government is now shutting down, surely this should be communicated. Movement for Democratic Alliance activist Edwin Ndlovu said the situation is tense but calm in the city. He went on to say, today in Bulawayo, the army and the police were chasing people away from the city, telling them that they were not earning enough to go to work, therefore businesses were closed in Bulawayo. Those who asked why they were being chased away from the city were assaulted and some detained by the army in Machobana, Milakazi, and near Amakosi. Now, last time when the army did this, the next day our Harvest House offices in Harare were invaded at night, and we suspect they might want a repeat of this in Bulawayo. This was, of course, in November 2017 when then sitting president Robert Mugabe was ousted. And ENCA ran a piece this morning about it and spoke to someone on the ground in Zimbabwe, and this is how it went down.
Blessing, a very good morning to you. So I understand you have eyes and ears in Zimbabwe. Tell us whether indeed the military in Zimbabwe have surrounded the major cities of Bulawayo and Harare. For what reason?
Okay, thank you, Collis. I can confirm that the Zimbabwe National Army has been deployed in the major cities. I'm sure you're aware that last week, that is, the National Working Committee on the Security, that is the Joint Operations Command, convened a press conference allaying, fears and dismissing what they called rumors of a coup d'etat that was facing the nation. But this deployment is also being used under the guise of, regulating, the lockdown that the country is currently in to curb the spread of coronavirus. But we know for a fact that this is just a cover. There's a lot that is happening in Zimbabwe. The center, I'm sure it's no longer holding the ZANU-PF factional fight. So they are using this also to curtail, the freedoms of Zimbabwe, that is the freedom of movement and the continuous shrinking of democratic space and the closure of civic space. This is something that is worrying us. And also remember that there are public hearings on constitutional amendment number 2 that are currently happening in the country. And we've also seen, an attempt by the security forces, an attempt by the government not to allow Zimbabweans to participate freely in those, public hearings. So they are also using this, to bar Zimbabweans from participating in the public hearings.
Yeah. Blessing, you speak of rumors of a coup, and that this is essentially what these soldiers are being deployed for on the streets of Zimbabwe. It's also being reported that the very same soldiers that are on the streets everywhere in Zimbabwe have been circulating a video of former President Robert Mugabe's ousting. That letter that was read in the National Assembly of his resignation, and the caption that goes with this video, Blessing, and I just want to quote here what I've received. It reads, "From time to time, we must remind each other." What do you make of the caption that has been sent out with this video?
Well, I think that, reading from that video that you are talking about, it is clear that when a military coup happens, there is a lot that is involved. There are a lot of people that are involved in that military coup. It is not just the elite, the part of the military elite, but also the ordinary soldiers were part and parcel of that coup, and they feel that they are yet to get the spoils, of that coup, because there were promises that the removal of Robert Mugabe was also going to improve, their remuneration as, as the security, as the people or the soldiers on the ground. But we have seen that the economy has deteriorated, and as of the day before yesterday, the members of the army had received their salaries, and their salaries is just an equivalent of $40 a month in the country with the runaway inflation, in a country where the cost of living is getting high. The economy has failed, to work. So essentially, that reminder is to say, we assisted you to be in power, but you are still in poverty. Nothing has improved. In fact, the situation has deteriorated. But we know for a fact that in any country where a military coup has happened, it has a tendency of recurring. What we saw in November 2017 is still with us. Zimbabwe is still in a coup as I speak. That is why you saw the soldiers have never returned to the barracks. In many occasions, they are used and they are unleashed upon innocent civilians who would try to air out their grievances, also to challenge or to call for the improvement in the economy, the improvement in their livelihood.
Yeah.
But essentially, what we are seeing is a military that is fed up, a military that is doubling into politics, because they have realized that it's actually possible to stage a military coup and get away with it. And this is a call to the military that they must return to barracks. Their actions have no place in a democracy. They have no place in any jurisdiction.
All
and
right.
we also call upon regional bodies like SADC, like the African Union, to rein in on the situation that is happening in Zimbabwe, because it is a threat of destabilizing the region. It is a regional threat.
Yeah.
And also that the statutes of SADC, they conform to the promotion of peace and maintenance of peace, security, and democracy. And we urge the Zimbabwean government to abide and to conform to these values and principles.
Yeah.
But also,
Blessing, just
this is
very
a
quickly,
mind-
let me interrupt you there, Blessing. I just want to find out very quickly, very briefly if you can, the deployment of security forces on the ground in Zimbabwe is usually followed with, or it usually is accompanied by a heavy-handedness in the handling of citizens. How are ordinary people being handled by the soldiers and police on the ground right now?
Well, essentially, I can say that Zimbabwe is now under martial law. Remember that we had some abductions that happened earlier in the month, last month, where it is suspected, there is high suspicion that members of the military were involved. And we've also had cases of civilians being beaten, civilians being abused by members of the army in various parts of the country. So this is a pattern that has remained, in our political environment for quite a long time. This is not only happening now, but cases have been reported of the abuses that the military has been perpetrating since the fall of Robert Mugabe in November 2017. The shootings of July 2018, just after the elections.
Yeah.
The shootings by the military in January of 2019, when the wave of demonstrations rocked Zimbabwe. So essentially, the military has not returned to the barracks since November 2017.
All right, Blessing Vava, thank you very much for your time. He is with the crisis in Zimbabwe.
Yeah, so definitely something to be concerned about just on the other side of our borders. And this is not something that's happening overnight. Let's just be fair. It's been boiling up now for quite a while now, a couple of weeks, months or so, to say. And we'll remember that in November 2017, Robert Mugabe was released from power, although he did officially resign. He didn't really have much of a say in the matter. And since then, Emerson Mnangagwa's taken over, and he was supposed to be what people were referring to as a savior, and that things were going to get a lot better in Zimbabwe. But actually things have just deteriorated. And if things aren't bad enough, his son, Collins Mnangagwa, let me just get that right, his son Collins is involved in a scandal at the moment over there and has been taken into custody. And this is all regarding COVID-19 supplies to the value of 17 million rand. And apparently him and a partner were awarded this contract without going through the competitive bidding process. So it sounds like there's a little bit of an insider thing happening over there. But we'll keep an eye on what's happening in Zimbabwe. Like I said, it's all too familiar because this is exactly how it went down in November 2017 with the army moving into the main centers before overthrowing government. But I'll keep you up to date and informed as the information comes in on my side as well. And on Friday, hopefully I'll be able to unpack it a little more. And if there are any major developments, we'll definitely be covering that.
You're listening to Noel Johnson. Noel Johnson
on RTL SA. RTL SA.